Hello everyone, I'm Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IAS English. In our today's video, we'll talk about the reasons based on which India left its first and only overseas airbase, that was the Ayni Air Force Airbase located in the country of Tajikistan. So why this development actually happened or what made India exit Ayni Air Force Base, that is what we are going to understand in our today's discussion. Now the notes of this video that I'll be using in this session, in case if you want to download them, you can go to this particular Telegram channel, and while you're at it, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button also. So let us start by understanding the latest development that is happening. Now in the year 2022, India gradually and slowly away from the eye of many people and away from the eye of news agency, they quietly started to withdraw from the military airbase, that was the Ayni Air Force Base in Tajikistan, where many military personnel as well as equipments like fighter aircrafts of Indian Air Force were deployed. Now last month it came to light that India no longer continues to operate this overseas airbase in Tajikistan. So we'll try to understand the reasons behind it in our today's video. Now, it was the only full-fledged overseas airbase that India used to control, and it offered India significant edge or a very prominent military foothold in the Central Asian countries. Now, this airbase was in close proximity to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as well as Pakistan in general. So, it also allowed India to keep an eye on what was happening in Pakistan. Therefore, it provided India kind of strategic edge. Now, this projected influence, it allowed India to regionally dominate. And this region historically has been not dominated by India, but it continues and was historically dominated by major powers of the region like Russia and China. So that is why India's presence in Central Asian republics, particularly through Ayni Air Force Base in Tajikistan, was very important. And that is why this withdrawal of India can be seen in form of a setback. So why this setback happened? What was the significance of this airbase? And what would be the impact of India in terms of lack of strategic foothold now, that we are going to understand. Okay, now first let us talk about why are we discussing this topic. Now you need to understand questions on important military bases that have been in news are frequently asked in this exam. Case in point, this 2022 question, look, Chad setting up of a permanent military base by China. Now this is incorrect. Why? Because first permanent military base of China was not in Chad but in a country called as Djibouti, right? So we are going to understand what are the important military bases of not just India but other major powers of the world also. Okay, so that is why this kind of a development is important. See another question in 2022, which one of the best reflects issue with respect to Senkaku Island. Now Senkaku Island is a territory which is disputed between China and Japan. So that is why such questions was asked, and it was in news in 2022. So naturally, those kind of topics are picked up frequently by this exam, and therefore the kind of discussion that we are going to have today about Ayni Airbase naturally makes it important from UPSC exam. Now Ayni Airbase is located few kilometers of west of the city called as Dushanbe, which is the capital of the country Tajikistan. Now it is also located in a very strategic geographical location. Why? This is situated about 20 kilometers from Afghanistan's Wakhan corridor, and Wakhan corridor of Afghanistan shares its boundary with Pakistan occupied Kashmir, the part of Kashmir that they are illegally occupying, and it is our sovereign territory, and also China's northwest Xinjiang province. So that is why it is located in a very strategic geographical location. If you want to see it, where is it? This map would help you picturize it. As you can see on my down, there is this India's map of Jammu and Kashmir and Union Territory of Ladakh, whereas northwest of it, near the city of Dushanbe, is the Ayni Air Force Base, right? Now look at this Ayni Air Force Base, right? It is located here, and this is the part of Afghanistan called as Wakhan corridor, and you can see this part of Afghanistan, it shares its boundary with this area, that is Xinjiang province of China, and this part of Pakistan which they have illegally occupied, that is the area of Pakistan occupied Kashmir as well as the territory of Gilgit and Baltistan. So this is Pakistan occupied Kashmir, this is Pakistan, this is Afghanistan, and see Ayni Air Force Base is in few close proximity to these areas. So this allowed India a very strategic geographical heft where they established a military base here, and when they deployed fighter jets like Sukhoi 30 MKI here, it gave India leverage not just in the Central Asian Republic but also in the areas which are problematic to India: Afghanistan, Pakistan, as well as Chinese territory of Xinjiang province. Okay, so this is why geographical location of Aini Air Force Base was very critical. Now let us talk about the factors or why India had kept Aini Air Force Base as its military deployed overseas station. Now it is one of the key airbase which provided India's strategic location in Tajikistan, and it also historically supported India's regional interest as far as Afghanistan was concerned. Now before Taliban came into power in 1990s, India favored the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan, which was fighting the then Taliban. So to support Northern Alliance's military, India used services which it got through the Aini Air Force Base in Tajikistan, right? And it was also used by India not so long ago to evacuate its national after Taliban again took control of Afghanistan when US left in 2021. So this has been the reason, or this has been the outcome of why having a strategic Air Force base outside our country in a strategic location like Tajikistan, how it helped India to secure its national interest. It allied with Northern Alliance in its fight with Taliban, and when Taliban again took control of Afghanistan, the deployments from this Air Force base was used to evacuate Indian nationals out of Afghanistan. So this was the significance of Aini Air Force Base. Now this Aini Air Force Base was originally made at the time of Soviet era, and at the time when Soviet era was in poor financial condition. So naturally the status of this Aini Air Force Base was not entirely operational. Now India spent significantly. India spent as much as $80 million to renovate this airbase, which included repairing and upgrading the runway, which was made about 3,200 meters long, which allowed not just the fighter jets to be deployed there, but also heavy lift transport aircraft to operate from those kind of runways. India also constructed aircraft hangars which are used to park aircrafts, fuel depots, air traffic control facility, which was done under a bilateral agreement signed in 2002 between India and Tajikistan, right? So that is why this kind of an airbase, or India had huge deployments in this particular airbase. Now, much of this renovation was done by an organization known as BRO, Border Road Organization. At one period of time, India had as much as 200 military personnel, which was mostly from Army and Indian Air Force, and has also stationed many fighter aircrafts, including a few Sukhoi 30 MKI jets. And I told you the 3,200 meters long runway which India had constructed was not just able to host these fighter jets, but also was able to hold significant heavy military lift aircrafts. Now, after this agreement got expired in 2022, India, mutually with Tajikistan's government, agreed to withdraw its personnel from the Aini Air Force Base, and this is what has happened, right? Now, what you need to understand, what are the official reasons given for this withdrawal? Now, India has officially stated that since its bilateral agreement with Tajikistan's government for rehabilitation and development of any airport has ended, so that is why it has decided to hand over this facility back to the Tajikistan government. But it has been understood by many experts that Tajikistan government was reluctant to renew this lease because it was under significant pressure from the major governments of the region, that is the government of Russia and China. So not because of the mutual end of this agreement could have been renewed again if both of the countries wanted, but Tajikistan's government was reluctant because it was under pressure from Russia and China. So this is the reason which has not been communicated officially. Now let us understand how does this withdrawal from the Tajikistan's Aini Air Force Base would affect India. Naturally, it would affect India negatively. First of all, why? Because it was India's only first fully operational military airbase, right? And India spent significant amount of money. I told you, India spent as much as $80 million not just to construct more infrastructure, but it also deployed significant manpower there. At that one particular given time, there were more than 200 military personnel. And any overseas military base for that matter, it not just provides you geographical access to that country, it provides you access also to neighboring regions. And I told you the neighboring regions of Aini Air Force Base was one of the critically important Vacate corridor of Afghanistan, which is very close to Xinjiang in China, which is very close to POK in Pakistan, and that airbase also allowed us to keep an eye on what was happening in Afghanistan, right? So that is why it was a very strategically located airbase, and naturally withdrawing from that airbase would impact us negatively, and it would have been critical to fill up significant intelligence information that we could have gotten from there, right? Now, it was also located in a region which was very critical to India's interest in a broader scheme of things. I'm talking about Central Asian republics. Now, India naturally does not have a direct connectivity to Central Asian republics. So, India has to depend on countries like Pakistan, which it can't. It has to depend on countries like Iran. Through Chabahar Port, naturally, it can access to Central Asian republics. So, out of all this problem, one of the biggest solution to this lack of geographical access or lack of direct access to Central Asian republics was having a permanent presence there in form of Ayni Airbase. So that is why withdrawal from this would allow or would not allow India to have a significant leverage in the region. And I also told you it is very in close proximity to Xinjiang and POK. So we could have kept an eye on there through this Ayni Air Force Base. So this is why it impacts us negatively. Similarly, it also reduces India's ability to project power in Central Asian republics. Now, naturally, after India's withdrawal, it would lead to a geopolitical vacuum, and it is expected that countries like China, through a military cooperation agreement, or countries like Russia would fill this void. And when they are going to fill this void, it would naturally means India's strategic space in Central Asian republics would now shrink. So this is how it could impact India's policy in Central Asian republics. Now, I told you this was located in an area very close to China, that is in Xinjiang province, and very close to Pakistan, that is POK. So our withdrawal from there could compromise our intelligence reach, could compromise our situational awareness of the region. And also it would not allow us to influence key developments that is going to happen in Afghanistan after Taliban has returned to power. And security scenario in Afghanistan could change, which may have positive or even negative impact on India. So now we won't be in a position to dictate that from happening. So this is how it is going to affect India. Now, was the Ayni Air Force Base the only Air Force base India operated? The answer is incorrect, because India also operates in another military base, that is in Agalega Island in Mauritius. But the difference here is that the Agalega base which India operates was in jointly with Mauritius government, right? And it is located in western part of Indian Ocean, north of Mauritius, near the Eastern African coast. Now, India has upgraded some infrastructure there recently. Earlier, the runway there could have hosted only Dornier 228 aircraft. Now it has been upgraded so that it can also host, or the P-8I maritime surveillance aircrafts of the Indian Navy could also land on it. Now, Indian Navy has also created a jetty which would provide for naval access as well as refueling of the ships there. So this is the one of the bases that India operates, that is in Agalega Island of Mauritius. Now, what is the strategic significance or importance of this base? First of all, it allows or extends India's maritime surveillance reach across the very crucial southwestern part of Indian Ocean. It enhances India's military deployment in crucial sea lanes of East Coast, which is very vital for trade of or India's economic interest. It is very vital for security of the ships that fly through there. And it also balances China's expansion in the region. Now, China recently has tried to expand its military footprint in the Indian Ocean region through its bases like Djibouti and Gadar, right? So therefore, through our presence in Agalega Island, it would help us to check or balance the Chinese presence in the region. Now, in addition to that, India also has a very close military cooperation with countries like Bhutan, where it provides essential training to the military personnel. Now, there are multiple training centers in Bhutan which are operated by Indian military, particularly by the India's military training team, IMTRAT. Now, you have to understand these are not military bases for combat operations. These are just long-standing training and advisory operation bases. Now, through this presence, India trains personnel for Royal Bhutan's Army, Royal Bodyguard of Bhutan, and this is a symbolic gesture which shows India's defense responsibility towards Bhutan. It shows Bhutan's dependence on India for handling its security affairs. The most notable instance where India intervened in Bhutan to prevent harming of Bhutan's and India's security interests was during the Doklam issue that happened between India and China. But the issue of Doklam Plateau actually was a plateau located in Bhutan, right? So this is how India has presence across multiple countries in different forms and shapes. Now, what are the major air force or major military bases of other powers. First, let us talk about China. China's first official military overseas base was in Djibouti, which is located in Horn of Africa, very near to the strategic waterway of Red Sea. Now, this is a logistic hub which also allows Chinese PLA to conduct anti-piracy missions, intelligence collection, as well as support to its navy. And it supports PLA Navy's far sea operation and evacuation capability. So that is how I said that the presence of Chinese in the Indian Ocean region is expected to increase, and India through its Agalega Air Base can check this growing presence of China. Similarly, Tajikistan is also expected to be an unofficial presence of China, although it has not been officially recognized by the Chinese government, but there are reports and satellite images which confirm Chinese military facility near the Wakhan corridor. And the intention why Chinese have set up a base in Tajikistan is to monitor extremist movements and protect China's western border, particularly with its security interests in the Xinjiang province. Now, in Xinjiang province, China has faced separatism, China has faced extremism. So that is why, to protect its interests in Xinjiang, China is doing this. Now, let us compare the military bases with US. Now, US has a global network of more than 800 overseas bases and installations. The most notable one is Camp Humphrey, which is in South Africa, and it is largest overseas base of US, having the presence of more than 30,000 personnel. Similarly, Al Udeid Air Base, which is in Qatar, which was in news due to the conflict between Qatar and Israel. It is a regional headquarter for US Central Command. And also there are significant bases in Germany, that is in Ramstein, Stuttgart, and Japan, that is in Okinawa and Yokosuka. Now, these are key forward deployment areas where US ensures the security of Europe and Asia. Now, this air bases, this military bases of US allows it to rapidly intervene in cases of conflict, and it also allows the world's largest military to project its power across different continents, and that is why US is world's largest superpower. So these are the comparison that India's have with other major networks. Now, before solving the question, let me tell you something very important. Now, these are the instances which I picked up from current affairs, but have you thought about how will you cover your static portion of the syllabus? That you can do so by taking admissions to our resolution batches. Now, resolution batches, their other name is P2I foundation batches. P2I, it means everything from prelims to mains to interview, everything is covered. And in P2I foundation batches, we not just teach you security, but we teach you all other important subjects from UPSC perspective. You can take admissions in one of these batches, provided you want to give exams for 2027 or 2028, you can choose the batch accordingly. But keep one thing in mind: before taking admission, if you use the code ATS Live, you'll get maximum discounts up to 7,000 rupees. So save as much money as you can with the code ATS Live. Now, which one of the following statement best reflects the issue of with Agalega Island sometimes seen in the news? Please do let me know what is the correct answer out of these four options in the comment section. The ones who answer it correctly would get a thumbs up from my side, okay? And if you want to download the notes, they will be made available on this particular Telegram channel. So I'll take your permission. Please have a very good day.